Hello and welcome to Universally Challenged, the podcast where we do cultural criticism from a biblical perspective. Yay, another one. I'm sure everybody's excited. As almost always, I have Scooter here with me today, and we've got some stuff to discuss. A few things. You know, the month of May is pretty busy. He's been busy looking for jobs and stuff, and we've had, you know, everybody's got graduations and Mother's Days, and this is a big birthday month for my family, so we haven't done maybe as much study for this one, but we're going to try to, you know, come up with some topical stuff that everybody can relate to today. We don't really know where we're going is the point I'm making here.
Well, and can I throw this in real quick?
Yes,
Yesterday was the anniversary. Me and my wife have been married for 18 years.
Oh, so. Good job. Good job. Way to hang in there, Scooter. But so my point here is, if you feel like this didn't head in the direction you thought it was going to, it's because maybe we don't have a direction day. But we're going to get there. We're going to try to get there, okay? I found an interesting article I thought maybe you hadn't heard about. Vice President Kamala Harris is honored with an honorary degree from America's premier clown college.
I did not.
Oh, you didn't hear about that one? This is a reliable website. It's the Babylon Bee. Wednesday, for her hard work clowning around the nation's capital, Harris joins the pantheon of great American clowns such as Lori Lightfoot and John Wayne Gacy, it says. I thought that was an interesting article.
I'm not quite sure if I would go as far as to compare her to a serial killer, but...
Well, it's just legendary clowns here. She's in that pantheon. She said, I believe this is a quote from her, "It's an honor to be representing the great institution of clowning," VP Harris said humbly after donning traditional clown garb and squeezing a bugle horn. Who doesn't love a clown? Am I right? Ha 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 ha. Oh, I just love clowns. Ha 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 ha. That's her quote there. So that was just, I didn't know if you'd heard about that piece of news, if you want to congratulate her on her status as
I'm surprised she's not on one of those little yellow buses that she loves so much as well.
Well, I don't know. My question, is this a doctorate degree in clowning or, you know?
I don't know. I think it's well deserved, though. I will say that.
I think so too, man. And she could be our next president, maybe. No, you don't see that one happening?
No, I do not.
Do you think more or less likable than Hillary Clinton?
I think she's more likable.
More likable than Hillary?
Yes.
That's a tough one, ain't it?
It is a tough one. It is. At least you didn't say qualified. Then I would really have to think about that one.
Well, I mean, now she has a degree that Hillary doesn't have, even though I feel like Hillary's probably earned her clown degree as well. I'd come across this, and I thought it was worth sharing. You know, people kind of want a good story out of the White House every now and again, right? Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, speaking of what's going in the White House now.
Yes. Well, you know, and speaking of clownish type politics and laws, we were looking at, a couple weeks ago, we looked at some stuff coming out of the UK. Near crimes. You know what? You remember when we were talking about that?
Now refresh me on that.
Okay. A man in Great Britain posted a meme on Facebook that someone found offensive, and the homicide detectives come and arrested him for it. I saw another video of someone in Great Britain had posted something. Now, they would not show me what he posted. From the best guess I could have, because somebody was mentioning swastikas and stuff, I think it was the transgender flag made into a swastika, which I guess was accusing the transgender LGBTQ whatever stuff of being Nazis. Which would be my assumption. I don't think they were promoting Nazism. It was just like a symbol. This is the new Nazi party. And whenever you come and get arrested for posting that, it does sound like the Nazis are back.
Well, I have a problem with it because there's no originality to that. Because this is, when you want to bring Nazism and the swastika back, this is what the woke mob has been using to symbolize most of America that does not agree with them. So I think you could have been a little bit more original, if that is the case.
Yeah.
Of what you did. But it's funny how we see this. This is a classic case, if this is true, of fighting fire with fire.
Yeah.
So
there's the whole free speech issue there. Is this a real crime? I'm gonna let this guy tell his side of the story.
Okay.
But it sounds like they're calling it a near crime. What is that?
I don't know.
You were driving. It's 55 miles an hour. You're driving 55 miles an hour, so you're almost going 56 miles an hour. Is that what the?
It's kind of like when planes almost run into each other. They call it a near miss.
Oh,
that doesn't make any sense to me
because they miss.
It's almost a near hit.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. You can, yeah, I get what you're saying there. This gentleman, I do not know his name. It says it's from The Telegraph, but you never know if that's like a newspaper or if this is just this guy's deal. But it looks fairly professional. I'm going to have him let this guy tell his story.
Is free speech under threat in the UK? With the rise of so-called non-crime hate incidents, arrests over grossly offensive memes, and the government's online safety bill threatening to clamp down on social media posts, can you really speak your mind in 21st century Britain? To find out, I spoke to Harry Miller, a former police officer who has had several run-ins with the law over supposedly offensive online posts. Harry Miller, your name has become synonymous with people who have been dealt with the police because of their offensive tweeting. Can you explain to viewers exactly what's happened to you recently and also in the past in your relationship with the police?
They came to me because I tweeted about gender-critical content. I'd famously retweeted what they described as a limerick. It wasn't a limerick, it was a piece of feminist doggerel. Nevertheless, somebody, don't know who they were, they decided that this had caused them great offence, and they contacted Humberside Police, and Humberside Police then contacted me. Essentially what they said was that even though I committed no crime, if I continued not committing crime, that could in some weird way escalate to crime. I don't understand the magic behind that. I never have done. Nevertheless, that's what they said.
Okay, so can you explain your High Court victory against the police? What happened there?
After the police got involved with me, I realised that this was a breach of my human rights, Article 10 specifically. So we took Humberside Police to the High Court. Weirdly, we won. When the police come against you because you have said something that is controversial or because some trans person somewhere decided that they didn't like it, that when they take that trans person's moan seriously and they come and try and censor you, that is entirely illegal. And Mr. Justice Knowles equated it to the Gestapo and the Stasi. He said, we've never had a Gestapo or a Stasi in Britain. The actions of Humberside Police came way too close for comfort, and we now have a precedent set in the High Court that when the police do that again, we can just tell them, no, 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 no.
What do you say to people who don't particularly like you, don't like what you're saying?
I say tough. I really don't care whether you like me. There is only one question that needs to be asked. Are we on the right side of the law? It's absolutely immaterial whether you like us or whether you like our message. Providing we stay law-abiding, the police have no right whatsoever to interfere with our freedom of expression.
Well said.
That's why I let him say it. I figured he could tell his own story, but this is kind of a scary situation as far as they're going to, limit your speech. You're not allowed to criticize the government, basically. Mm-hmm. Very 1984.
Yes.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
I saw another video where they were talking about it, and they said they have a term for it now. It's an offensive incident, non-crime, or something like that. So it's an offensive incident, but it's not a crime. So I don't know, why are the police involved in that?
I don't know. Why are the homicide police involved?
I don't understand that either, and maybe I just don't understand how their legal system works in Great Britain.
And I don't either. So the positive aspect could be that there's so little homicide in Great Britain that they don't have anything else to do.
I don't think that's true.
I agree with you. I don't think it is either.
I think they try to make it sound like there's not as much homicide because they don't have guns, but I feel like there's a lot of stabbings and, people getting killed with blunt objects and everything else. The other thing they were talking about was there was nothing on their laws that said that he did anything wrong, but they're trying to put a bill through, and it was called the Online Safety Bill or the Online Harms Bill. I think it passed through one part of their legislature, but it eventually got cut down. Basically, the big push behind it, they're using examples like a boy that was playing video games online and met this man, and the man ended up coming to his house and killing him. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the extreme thing. I don't think any of us want that to happen, but they're really holding the tech company responsible for it, saying they didn't do enough to protect this child. Now, I don't know the details behind that. Maybe there was some sort of gross misconduct on their part that this guy was able to get their information through this. Or maybe through communication, the kid let him know where he lived and stuff. In that case, I don't know how the tech company's held responsible for it. But that's the big stuff they're trying to push on it. But the smaller stuff actually includes they want to stop disinformation, racism, misogyny, and homophobia. So that's online harm stuff. If any of those things are displayed, left up to the discretion of who decides what those things are.
Yeah, and that's the key, Zach, and really the elephant in the room, if you will, is this is just an attack on Christianity. And he kind of went to it. It's kind of irrelevant what the world has to feel about the Word of God. I say kind of. It is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant how me and you personally, as far as our emotions, feel about the Word of God.
Yeah.
His Word is truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take it or leave it. You can like it or dislike it. But as long as there's not any laws being violated, broken, then no one has any right to take that viewpoint and to take that away from the public sphere.
Well, I don't even know if the meme that he was posting had anything Christian in it or anything, but I think they do assume that it's Christians that have the problem with these things.
No, and that's where I'm going to.
Yeah.
This is just another step in how the secular world is systematically removing God from every sphere.
But then, if there is no God, who decides what's right and wrong?
Apparently these people do.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the people that think this way are fine with oppressing the people that don't think the same as them. Mm-hmm. I disagree. Therefore, mutilating children, I say that's a hard line. You can't cross that line. But no, I can't say anything about it because they're okay with oppressing how I believe. I just can't oppress how they believe. Because if I oppress them, it's causing harm. But if they oppress me, I don't understand correctly. I'm not thinking right, so it doesn't matter, right?
Yes, you're challenged.
Yeah. How does
you're racist.
Yes.
You're bigoted.
Yeah, to be fair, some of the later information I saw on this, I think this online safety bill is going to pass, but they had to remove a lot of this stuff. And I believe they removed the disinformation, racism, misogyny, homophobia stuff, but they're still highly encouraging those companies to kind of censor that type of stuff, which is the opposite of what we need. I mean, I'm not for any of these things, okay? I'm not for disinformation, but the government wants to feed us disinformation all the time.
Mm-hmm. The media is all
yes. They call it disinformation because you're not saying the same things they're saying. Mm-hmm. You're disagreeing with a narrative.
Correct.
And so it's disinformation because they decide what's true or not. That is very 1984.
It is.
It's rewrite the history books. And that's, oh man.
And the problem is, and you've already kind of addressed it, is where's the moral standard?
Yeah.
This now has become the default, what you're saying. If you don't agree with this particular point of view, it automatically falls under, I make my own decision on what's morally correct, and if you disagree with that, then guess what? You're wrong.
Or are we deciding it by vote now? They can get together, and we're all going to decide what's right and wrong, and the majority wins on it? Because if so, they may not like the results on that. Because I don't know if the majority is with all this crazy.
Well, you can certainly do it by displays of mob mentality, and we've seen that on several occasions.
Yeah, but that's always been a thing.
Well, I mean, that's true. But you're starting to see you're starting to see these things set in motion and gaining speed that we haven't been used to, at least not on the frequency.
Yeah, you can almost say this country was founded on mob mentality.
Well, a little rebellion's good every now and then, right?
That was the American Revolution, but I like that one, so I'm cool with it. No, I get you. They're trying to do it through. They cry the loudest. They pitch a fit. They're out in the streets. They got torches. They're threatening to burn you down. Mm-hmm. And people are afraid. So let's just give them what they want. so they won't hurt anybody.
Yeah, and I think the underlying message here that as Christians we need to be aware of, we covered 2 Kings, of course that's where we are in Sunday school, in chapter 17. The northern kingdom was taken into captivity, and then of course the ruler of Assyria at that time, Shalmaneser or Sargon, either one depending on the year, took 5 tribes, paganistic tribes, and put them back in the Holy Land, okay? And then the Jews that had remained there had intermixed and intertwined with these people. That's how we have the Samaritans.
Yeah.
But if you go through the last half of chapter 17, it talks about how people didn't necessarily have a problem with God or the God of the Bible. Mm-hmm. They just were more comfortable with the God of their own definition. And I think we see that a lot here, especially in America. It's not necessarily the fact that this generation has an issue with God.
Yeah.
Just as long as God fits into whatever mode that they want him to fit into.
Well, the number one thing we're inclined to do is to create a God in our, in our own mind, and we usually create him in our image. I mean, it's the first commandment: have no other gods before me, because that's what we want. And I think you're right. Their God is okay with how they do things. He just wants them to be happy.
Right.
But I do know that's on the decline as well. I saw some studies the other day where it was talking about in Great Britain specifically, since like the 1980s, 3/4 of the people considered themselves religious. They went down through the different categories, how they do the polls, and not necessarily Christian, but, believed in God, believed in heaven, things like that. And now they're and only like 4% were atheists, maybe like 3 or 4% were atheists. Well, now I want to say the atheist population is up to like 22% in Great Britain. And the people that believe in God are like right below 50%, or believe in heaven or things like that. So all that's on the decline for sure.
No, and I agree with that. And you can even see that here in America. Secular humanism, even Marxism has been on the rise. Started in Europe, of course, 20, 30 years ago, and it has gained steam over here. But this is another part of this mixing of religions.
Yeah.
And getting back to 2 Kings, that was kind of what God was saying in this word. This is what this leads to. A little yeast, and you keep mixing that yeast in, and the next thing you have here. That's why I want to encourage everyone that's out there that's a Christian that will listen to this broadcast. This is why we have to stand up for our rights.
Yeah.
And just as I believe as Peter would say, we have a duty to obey the government, laws that the government has put down, because God ordained government.
Yeah.
However, when that conflicts with the law of God, we have to obey the law of God as presented, because he is never going to contradict what he's already put into place.
And as Christians, we want free speech and stuff, and we allow other people to have voices because we don't want our voice taken away, right? And this makes me think about, have you been hearing the big debate on Christian nationalism lately? Well, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think they kind of have to watch the wording a little bit. I don't necessarily...
People don't like the term.
Yeah. I don't disagree with it, because I do believe, and we've talked about it, and I've even said a little bit today, we do have to come together. We have to start being the church that we have been called to be. And part of that is bringing this stuff to the forefront and addressing it, just like Christ did. If you want to talk about somebody that bucked the system, there's your example.
Yeah, but he didn't come up and set up a state religion or anything. I mean, Judaism was the religion.
No, and he even said he even said as much. I'm here to fulfill the law and the prophets.
And he said, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and to God's what is God's." And he really didn't care that much about the political system at the time, which is one of the things that irritated him. But I was just talking about, as far as Christian nationalism goes, it concerns me to the level of, I don't necessarily think that we need to make Christianity the state religion. I don't think it needs, because they're talking about like setting up somebody. I heard Todd Friel talking about setting up like a Christian prince or something who's over Christianity and all this stuff, but I don't see that helping anything. If we were to go in and legislate the fact that we're a Christian nation and we follow certain rules because we're Christians, okay, well, you're legislating something that's not making a change in the hearts of people. You can maybe even change somebody's mind and tell them this is the best way to live, this is the best outcomes, but if you're not changing their hearts, are you really fixing anything?
No, and I agree. That's why I say they really have to be careful with their wording, because what I've heard has caused me some concern.
Well, I don't know how you would do it. This country was founded trying to get away from a state religion. Well, the Church of England was persecuting because that was the state religion. So why would we want to set something back up where everybody was required to live under these certain laws?
Yeah, and it's so evident in Scripture to the contrary. We've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. This separation of church and state, if you will, was never meant to remove government from God. It was just to keep government from being that system, government deciding what religion we were going to. But it was never meant to take God out of the public forum in his leadership.
And the Bill of Rights were set up to protect us from the government.
Well, it even says so, and of course, I think we did that in one of our earlier shows. So
I don't know enough about the laws in Britain. And I've heard some people say they don't have a guaranteed freedom of speech like we have. I've heard some people on there say, in Britain, you're allowed to say whatever you want to as long as it doesn't offend somebody. But I've also heard people say under Article 8, whatever, blah, 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 that I have the right to this. Without offensive speech, you do not need protection of speech. You know what I'm talking about? Nobody cares if you're just going around saying things everybody likes all the time. If you say something somebody disagrees with, that's the speech that needs to be protected. That's why we allow people to say offensive things. I'm not for people saying offensive things. I'm not for the racism, whatever that they're saying needs to be blocked out. I don't think as a Christian, any of your posts or anything on social media should be accused of any of those things. Nowadays, we're really big into satire. We looked at Babylon Bee at the beginning. I don't know if that was a real article, Scooter. I mean, it sounded like it could have been real, but it could have been satire. And I think that's a good way to make a point sometimes. And I think as Christians, we try to be funny on social media and we try to put things out there that it's going to make a point. But maybe sometimes we need to be careful about what type of stuff we post on social media. Because even though your posts may not be racist and you don't find it offensive, but you know it's going to offend somebody, perhaps we should maybe not make that post.
Well, I agree, and the Apostle Paul addressed it on several different occasions, where especially in the case where he talks about, everything is permissible for me, but it's not valuable, it's not effective, it's not efficient. So if I'm going to cause anyone, especially another brother or sister, to stumble or come out, then I can do it, but should I do it?
We definitely have to draw that line. Now, at the same time, people are offended by the truth. We've talked about this before, and I can't not give truth. I can't not give the gospel just because it's going to offend somebody, because it offends.
Yes,
and and people are going to be upset about it, and it's going to go from that to you hate gay people, you hate transgender people. It's just going to go downhill from there. But I do think what this guy did, he had the total right to do. I don't know if this is the gentleman. I saw another video where they were getting arrested in the UK. They handcuffed them, everything, where they were asking what they actually did wrong. And the police are explaining that, they caused somebody great anxiety. So somebody saw it and they were very anxious. And I guess it could have caused them harm because of their anxiety. So they were getting arrested for it. That is not.
We had the case not too long ago about the preacher's kid up in Canada. I wonder if that was it, where he was arrested because of comments that were made close to
This was
it.
in the UK.
Okay.
Canada's not far behind.
Well, on the free speech side of this, have you seen? I don't know if I included it in my text that I gave you about 2,000 ideas.
Yeah, you sent me a lot of ideas.
I hit you hard. But California now is in the process of setting up a hate hotline. So if someone
call in and say something offensive,
absolutely.
Hey,
and you report them.
The governor of California. I can see a lot of prank calls on that one. You just call in, tell them what you're hating that day.
Yeah.
McDonald's McFlurry machine wasn't working. But slam the phone.
Yeah. But it's here, and surprise, surprise, it comes from the wonderful state of California.
What type of stuff are you report on a hate hotline?
Well, just anything that offends you, basically. Oh, that's racist, that's homophobic, that's transphobic. How many phobics can you throw in there?
But what is it? What good does it do?
You tell me. I don't know. It's just to suppress any type of consenting view from what we've mislabeled woke now. Because we talked about woke once in a different show.
I hate most things that offend God, okay? I do. And then there's things that offend God that I love because I'm a sinner. You know what I'm talking about? But really, as a Christian, I hate those things. Even, you know, when I lose my temper or whatever, I hate that. But I don't know what I can do to calling an authority and telling them that these things I don't like are going on. It's like a little kid telling on another little kid for something.
That's exactly what it is.
But yeah, as far as freedom of speech goes, I think in America, that's something we really hold close and dear as Americans, that we can say what we want to say.
Agreed.
And I think most of us can stand on the same side on that. But there's getting to be where there's people that aren't wanting you to be able to say what you want to say. And there's people that don't agree with it, but they want to be able to say what they want to say. So I'm going to support them in saying I shouldn't be able to say what I want to, but I'm going to tell them they're wrong. And that's one we should fight over.
I agree.
In Great Britain, it may be a little different, but it sounds like most of their people really aren't for this stuff. But we're always just a little behind what's going on in Europe. The trends that you see happening there are heading towards us. You can see that they're heading towards a non-religious nation. They're heading. I mean, they were compared with countries like China, South Korea. They didn't mention North Korea, but you know their religion is their, you know, dictator or whatever. Japan, godless countries, pretty much. Great Britain's in that list with them. You know, they're not quite as high as some of those others like China, you know, 70%. Of course, their people are controlled by their government too, but we're heading that way.
Yes.
We're heading that way. I don't know if I can end that one on a good note. Just praise God that we have the liberties we have here right now. Let's fight to keep them. I'm not telling people who to vote for, but I'd vote for the people that want to protect your civil rights or your Bill of Rights as is, and not attack it on any level. Transitioning on, it was a man on the subway, Michael Jackson impersonator. A lot of people have videos of him doing this Michael Jackson stuff. Look, he did a good job. He's 30 years old. Do you remember his name? Okay. Maybe I should be prepared for this. But anyway, there's a lot of people have sympathy on this guy, and I saw the videos of him dancing and stuff. Evidently, he has mental health history. He's been homeless, 30 years old, was on a subway car, not in his Michael Jackson stuff, not doing his routine, started freaking out on people, yelling, saying he was prepared to die today. He didn't care if he lost his life. He went away forever. I didn't necessarily hear that he struck anybody, but I can imagine being on a subway car with that stuff happening. I've been in close situations with people that were losing their mind before. It's a scary situation. From my understanding, several of the passengers tried to kind of restrain him, and this 24-year-old Marine got in behind him and started putting a chokehold on him, right? Now, I cannot watch that video. YouTube is like blocking that big time. I've been trying to pull it up. I just started looking at it today, so I can't see the whole video. I've seen little clips of it. The guy looks like he has a normal kind of like, if you watch the UFC, on their back, rear naked choke, has the guy choked, holding him down. Other people are trying to hold the guy's arms because he's still trying to swing and fight. Evidently, it went on for 15 minutes. The man ended up dead, right? Do you know any more details behind it than that? I know that right now they're trying to charge him for manslaughter, and they're basically marching in the streets.
Yeah, and it's controversial about how this protest all came about.
Yeah.
You know, to begin with. Certainly staged, especially the one in the subway. He had a long criminal history as well as mental health violations.
Like 40-something arrests, and like 3 of them were assaults on women. But it still doesn't speak to what he was doing that day. I don't know what he was doing that. Do you know anything other than him just being
other than
irate?
the fact he was making verbal and physical threats.
Okay.
He was what we call in the hospital suicidal ideation, basically, or homicidal ideation, if you will, with the comments that he were making. The statements from those that were in the car talked about how extremely afraid and how they thought that they were in danger. The fact that they were, at least most that I've seen from the people that were there, have been in full support of not just the one person, but the 2 or 3 individuals that were shown to subdue this individual and keep him from possibly harming. And now this is just subjecture on my part. I think he would have let to go on. 911 was called. Of course, we know the problems now in New York. It went on for 15 minutes. Still no police officer up there. I can't get too mad at the police officer because they've pretty much defunded everything's going down there. But what I felt striking, Zach, was when it comes to talking about 911 being called, everyday New York citizens that have come out and said the junk that they see on the subway every day, for it to escalate to a point where somebody would actually call the police.
Because I've seen videos of stuff that goes on the subway and people just sit there with their head down, don't look.
And so that's what kind of drew my ire when they started talking about this man acting inappropriately. You had several people that have come out and said, look, we see stuff like this all the time. We see public defecation. We just see people come up and slapping people for no reason, pushing, making sexual threats.
Yeah.
Just blow it off because that's a normal day on the subway. But for it to get to a point where somebody, and not just one, but multiple people dialing 911, there was certainly a threat that was perceived by the individuals on that subway.
Well, see, that's my question. At what point are you allowed to step in? You know, do you have to actually wait for this guy to commit violence? Do you have to wait for him to hurt somebody, stab somebody before you can step in?
According to the law, is if you
feel your life's in danger,
yes, then you have the right to protect yourself.
Well, and to me,
such a gray area. That's
people
why.
are really upset, saying someone died, someone has to pay. You know, people are calling it homicide. One of our greatest Congress people, AOC, is calling this, you know, something that needs to be taken care of, that this was a crime that was committed against this guy. But I would like to see her on a train with something like that happening in her face.
That's my point. And we talked about earlier about, and this is something that I think everybody struggles with. Part of me wants to just say exactly that. You know what? Get out of your glass house, get on a train, let me see somebody beat the crud out of you.
Yeah.
Let's just see if that knocks a little bit of sense. Maybe it doesn't, Zach.
Yeah.
Maybe but at least I can take you a little bit more seriously. I still think you're crazy. But for you to sit up there and not be a part of this, to be completely insulated from it, to put in actions that provide detriments to people, that the normal people like the police and others, that's their job to protect and to serve, to take that ability away from them. And then you want to stick up for somebody's completely mental ill. Now, that's we can get on the mental illness side of everything.
And that's the other thing. Is it excessive? They're saying it's excessive what he did. He choked him for 15 minutes. Well, the other day when I could see a little bit of the video, it looked like most of the time he's trying to hold the guy down with a chokehold, the guy's still fighting. And I don't know. I watch a lot of the fights, you know, the UFC type stuff. And for a whole 5-minute round, someone can be trying to choke somebody and they haven't really choked them. And when they do choke them, they pass out. Now, there's been a couple of extreme cases where the guy was passed out. He didn't look passed out. It took him a little long to get the other person off of him. But this guy looked, he was trying to fight to the point where it was taking 2 other people to hold his arms down the whole time. So just because you're putting a choke on somebody for 15 minutes doesn't mean you're choking them for 15 minutes.
Right.
But it also seems like the least violent way to take care of somebody in that situation. It's not like they started throwing punches at him, got him on the ground, and kicked him to death.
Well,
it sounds like they just want the guy to stop what he's doing, not hurt anybody. That's what I would personally think. Is a chokehold in that situation would be the best thing. The guy was behind him. His head wasn't hitting the ground. They were keeping him safe. Now, some people might argue with that safe term since the guy died, but my understanding is when it was over, when the guy finally did go out, the guy got out from behind him, tried putting him in a recovery position, making sure his airway was open, all that stuff. If you're trying to murder somebody, you're usually not trying to help them out whenever they're done.
Well, thankfully, this is one of the cases, because, you know, everything's videoed now. This is one of the few instances, but thankfully somebody did catch this on video. Because if left up to his own biases, Bragg, which is he would love to do a murder trial, love to it. That's all he wants to do. But with what we see now, clearly there was no intent.
So
to
what
take
has
this
to
man's
happen
life.
now on a subway? A man has to get on there. You have to watch him assault somebody and not step in because you're going to be the one that gets in trouble for it. And what happens if he goes to the point where I have to wait for him to do something and he pulls a knife and stabs somebody? You're trying to stop it before it gets there and step in. That's how I'm seeing it. But everything I watched was slanted one way or the other on it. It was either totally like, the grand jury may let him go before he goes to trial, like they were upset about it, or it was like, oh, this guy definitely did nothing wrong, he's a hero type thing. And I even, when I was looking it up, I saw a video from 7 years ago where on a train there was a passenger that was trying to fight people, and he was in this guy's face and he kept yelling at him, and he had his, his fist clenched and kept getting in the guy's face. A man walked up behind him, put him in a chokehold, choked him out, put him on the ground, and held his foot on him till they stopped. And he was being heralded as a hero. They're interviewing him on the morning show. Everybody wants to know who he is and all this stuff. Now, of course, the guy didn't die. He choked. I know that's a different story. And, of course, it was a white guy who choked. I'm not saying that makes a difference. I'm sure that doesn't matter to these people at all, Scooter. Even though I do know that several of the reports I heard was like, a white Marine. Well, I thought we weren't supposed to be mentioning race on it. That's like,
thankfully, this entertainer wasn't transgendered, or thankfully, the Marine was not an active duty police officer. He definitely would have been on trial for murder for that. We had another Ferguson incident.
I think it's funny. The one guy does it. He gets away with it. They said, well, why did you do it? Why did you step in for the guy they were heralding as a hero? And he goes, well, when you're 6'3", 240 pounds, and someone's threatening people on a train, he said, you should step. He said basically he's the one that should step in for it. He just said he never even choked anybody before. They were like, people were saying he was a professional MMA fighter and stuff. He said first time he'd ever put a chokehold on somebody, but he just walked up behind him, did it, stopped the violence from happening. Because we've all been in those situations where something bad's about to happen. And in any situation where someone gets hurt, people always say, I wish I would have done something before it happened. Right. This guy steps up and tries to help people, and they're trying to try him for manslaughter, right? Even though when somebody dies, I know if someone broke in here right now and was coming at us and I shot and killed them, I'm probably still going to be put before a grand jury or something to determine self-defense. I'm in my own house. But I don't think in this situation that's necessarily what it is, where it's just like you have to go through this process because somebody died. I think they're trying to get this guy put away for...
Well, and of course every situation is different, but you have to look at the climate of the world that we live in today, especially in places that are so blue as New York. And I could be wrong, but I believe the district attorney is taking this man straight to trial. He's bypassing a grand jury because he doesn't want to take the chance.
You know what? I may have heard that too. I thought I heard that, but then I watched another one where they were talking about the grand jury could let him go.
And I think that's why he decided. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what I'm talking about. What's the
grand jury for if you're not gonna? I thought everybody went to grand jury.
Well, and see, I don't know the law well enough, but apparently I've heard that as a DA, you do have the right, I guess, in some instances where you can bring a person to trial. Like I said, I don't know. Somebody knows the law a lot better than me.
I heard the DA talking about it, and he sounds pretty fired up. Like this, he really wants this guy. Will we see justice in this life, Scooter? I don't think so. We can't expect justice, and now we have social justice. They're trying to act like if they don't take care of it, that the mob will take care of it type thing. None of it's justice.
We've got so much going on right now, Zach, from illegal immigration to the homeless problem to mental health issues to the alphabet community. I agree with you. We'll never see justice, at least not good, solid biblical justice that...
Well, they said in the UK, if you get caught for one of those non-crime crimes, they want to do what do they call it, restorative justice course with you, which is, from what I can tell looking it up, they're calling it a brainwashing session.
It sounds kind of like that gender reaffirming stuff.
They bring you in, you talk to the person who was the victim of your non-crime that you didn't even commit, and they tell you how it affected them and how it hurt, and then you try to find a way to make it better. Restorative justice is something we do in America, too, where they're trying to avoid putting people behind bars. We put them through a restorative justice program. Even if they commit all the way up to murder, they don't know that how they're affecting the victims. And when the victims come in and tell them, they can decide to do what's right and try to make it up for them, and they can go out and be productive members of society. That's why justice in the Bible was swift. Oh, what? You killed that guy? You're dead,
That sounds like a good argument for pro-life, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it should be. But no, those people are irredeemable because those babies were going to be born into families that had no money. You know,
and they got this great.
And it was going to put
this great project, this great reform program that we can put them in.
Scooter, they were going to come in and take our natural resources and use up our government funds and really put a strain on the economy. So those babies deserve to die.
Just like our transgendered people up in Seattle, Washington now have a place where they can go when their parents disagree with.
Look, I'm okay with getting rid of some people, but not the ones that haven't been born yet. No, I'm not okay with getting rid of people. That's God's job. He decides who comes and goes, and it may be my turn tomorrow. So
that's true.
I think we're both agreeing that this guy probably shouldn't be up for manslaughter charges. Like I said, in a different circumstance, he should probably be given a medal or something.
Well, one thing that it shouldn't, but it kind of makes me laugh because I think it's comical. Is we look at things that we've already brought up. We look at mental health. We look at homelessness. Those terms will get used for about 5 minutes in a conversation. Somebody will come up and say, we need to address this, but nothing ever gets done. And that's part of the root cause of a lot of this that's going on. So why are we, as a society, not addressing that? I think it was Dr. Jeffers not too long ago during one of his sermons was talking about. He was mowing the yard when he was growing up. That was his primary task. And he would mow around a weed, and his father had to correct him one day on the proper way to do that. And he told him that you stop the mower, you get down there, you dig into the roots, and you pull that out. And he was talking about that was kind of Jesus's point on the Sermon on the Mount, is there's certain parts of your lifestyle that you can make look pretty like our society. But if you don't ever get down to the root cause, you're always going to be faced with this stuff.
Well, and the root is the hearts of the people.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was talking about earlier with the Christian nationalism. And even if we were to make laws that were pro the Bible, we all believe this way, this is how we view it as a country, it doesn't change the hearts. So it's still going to go this way. You even saw it in Israel when the hearts of the people weren't with God, how they went.
No, and I agree. And basically, I think we've got good laws set into place.
Yeah.
So tweaking those is not what I would say would be the right way to go, but I don't know, Zach.
Yeah, that's why the gospel's important. That's why you need to give your money to missionaries, not just foreign missionaries, but missionaries to this country. And we need to be missionaries in our own country.
So, quick question. I know this is completely off topic, but it's a good kind of segue from where we've come.
Okay.
Me and you have talked ad nauseum about how Christianity has always thrived under persecution. It's doing so today. It did so when it first started out. It's done so throughout its course of history. Now that we are starting to see actual, maybe not biblical persecution as we kind of think of it in our head, but now that we see this attack on Christianity, the church, seeing things like this on a strong, absolute moral standard way of life, do you think there's any hope for any type of revitalization for Christianity in this country?
I mean, you can hope for it. God has made promises to Israel in the Bible that didn't necessarily apply to us about, his people that are called by his name will return to him, that, he's going to bless them. Now, that wasn't about us, and I'm not applying it to us, but that's consistent with God's nature and character. That if the people's hearts do change, and we do look to God and we honor God and worship God as God and hold true the things that his morality, his values and stuff, that I think he'll bless us. I mean, he blesses us right now, Scooter. I mean, we're still blessed in this situation.
Especially where we live.
We're not persecuted. I saw the stuff in India that's going on, where like 400 churches were burned. Did you see that? 400 churches. At least 70 people have been killed during this time. The Hindus are attacking the Christians, and it seems very political, like this one tribe of Christians wants to be nationally recognized, and they don't want them to be nationally recognized because they are the main group in the area. They're saying, why aren't the police stopping this? But they said some of the videos that are being recorded, the police are the ones actually out there helping them burn the buildings and stuff down. They're saying because these aren't nationally recognized groups, that technically they shouldn't even be allowed to set churches up on state property. So that's why they're burning their churches and stuff down. And they're just murdering people, coming into their churches sometimes and killing people. So we do not live it. We're still very blessed in this country.
Oh,
That's
yes,
not happening
yes.
to
No,
us.
I don't mean to say that people are actually actively dying and things like that, but you are seeing
No, what
a little
it
bit more
does,
fire starting to get turned
persecution
up.
purifies the church is what it does, because only the real Christians are still going to be left whenever the persecution comes. So you'll find out who the true people of God are, and he's always going to have his remnant. Maybe America's not the place where we're going to be. We always think we're the country, God bless America, that we're the God-fearing country. Maybe we're not always going to be that country, but God will always have his people. It'd be a blessing if God turned China into a Christian nation. Maybe we're not anymore. There's a lot more people over there. It doesn't sound good to us because we're here and we want America to be the Christian nation. But if we're not working on it, if we're not taking the gospel to people, and we're just, taking care of your family, raising your family Christian is one of the most important things you can do. But sharing your faith with other people is the next step from that. And that's what we're called to do.
Well, and to that point, places like China, the church is growing.
Yeah.
Whereas
Under
compared to here,
persecution.
it's declining. And,
And
that's a big encouragement. My point was just look at the name of this podcast. At the end of the day, that's where our hope lies. It's with Christ alone. Enjoy your blessings, but continue. As long as we're here on this earth, we have a job to do. We've been called to spread the gospel.
Yeah.
And we have to be diligent and go on with that.
Yeah, and that's the only solution for the problems we're seeing here.
It's the only one that can change hearts.
Yeah. We do appreciate everybody listening, and if you haven't witnessed anybody this week, witness to somebody, and if you have witnessed to somebody, go and witness to somebody else.
Amen.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. And until next time, keep styling and profiling. UC Cast out.